Hello, everybody. This is 2021 and the first show or live stream of our Black Hair Matters, and I am so excited. Happy New Year, everyone. I am joined with someone who is very near and dear to me. It's actually a treat for us to be on together for the first official launch of our Hair Black Matters. And just to give you just an oversight of what this is about, our Black Hair Matters is a platform, a safe platform where you can have trusted information about things that pertain to Black hair. And this originated because our Black hair truly does matter. It is a culmination of me just being aware of some of the things going on in the industry and me just trying to make a difference as a hair scientist. So I am Dr. Crystal Porter. I am owner of Main Insights. And it is just wonderful to be on here and to share and to have a passion to make sure that the right information is out there. And so as Main Insights, I collaborate with hair practitioners who are serious and conscientious, who really want to make a difference in being a part of the solution. And it is a way for us to get the research that's needed to make sure that our Black hair is taken care of and we know about the products and ingredients, making sure that they are safe. And it really is about educating and empowering and elevating the industry. So without further ado, I see a couple of people on here. Hey, Brianna. Hey, Renee. Thanks for joining. Really appreciate it. And so while we're waiting for people to come on, I just wanted to give, just some background, excuse me, about Angela Ellington. She and I worked together I was at the L'Oreal Institute for Ethnic Hair and Skin Research for over 10 and a half years. So I've known her for that long. And she is she started her career as a formulation chemist, but she rose through the ranks because of her brilliance, and she was able to oversee a lot of the different brands that you know and are near and dear to your heart. So without further ado, I'm going to let Angela just give a little bit of information about herself, but she is someone who continues to be brilliant and really want to make a difference with me. So it's very appropriate that you're here. So thanks, Angela.
Thanks, Crystal. It's great to join you, as you said, for your first meeting on the Our Black Hair Matters from 2021. So I'm happy to join you on your first meeting. As Crystal stated, been friends and colleagues now for quite some time. Our time together at L'Oreal was 10 and a half years, but since that time, we have continued our relationship. And we also continue to talk about this industry because we both have this passion to make certain that our Black hair matters is an area in which we can educate, we can inspire, and all of this is coming from the actual vision of Dr. Porter. So I thank you, Dr. Porter. As Crystal stated, I started my career in the industry now almost 35 years, not quite 35 years. I have until October, but this would be my 35th year in the industry. I started working on brands such as Dark and Lovely and Beginnings and Magic Tory. And I moved forward and where I joined Crystal was at the L'Oreal, where I was responsible for Mizani and Optimum Hair, Dark and Lovely. And we also worked on Matrix Brazil. So had an opportunity to work on several brands, touch various textures of hair. Rose to the rank to lead the team as Assistant Vice President of Ethnic Research and Innovation, which allowed me to actually do research on a broader scale globally, working with scientists and business partners and marketers. With all that being said, I have to say the most exciting part of this journey for me is now as an entrepreneur and owner of two companies, RTG Research Laboratory, just a manufacturer of moisture silk, very focused on hair health, field of healthy hair, and also D&E Industries Inc., where I am just so grateful to actually serve others by helping minority entrepreneurs seek their opportunities to develop their own product line. So I consult and I provide product development services under D&E Industries, Inc. And to keep the education going, I partner with dear friends and colleagues like Dr. Porter so that we can make certain that we keep this information front and center to all of those who are impacting our cosmetic industry.
Yeah, awesome. So, one of the things that I wanted to touch on with you saying that, you continue to help those in the industry. I want to talk about something that it I want to approach it very delicately because I'm very sensitive to the small business owner. I mean, we're all really trying to do our best and have products that are good. But some things that I've noticed, particularly with those who like to tinker a little bit with formulations. I think it starts off when you have a product and you're like, ooh, I heard this oil is good, so I'm just going to add this little bit of oil to this particular product. And I just wanted to get your opinion about how you feel about that from, the numerous years that you've been in the industry. I mean, you've seen it all. So I'm just curious about, what should people be aware of? Because it's not just stylists who are doing it. There are just people who just want to tinker.
Yes. So as my daughter would tell me, they call it the DIY, to do it yourself. And to be honest, we've been DIYing for an extremely long time. I could think about growing up, their use of mayonnaise or use of eggs as that conditioner was not something that was uncommon. And as I didn't frown about it then, because of course I'm young and I was seeking the benefits, especially very tight curly hair. I would say this 4C hair. So I understand why we do it. I have to say though, as a scientist now in understanding ingredients, it makes me somewhat a little bit nervous in certain instances, and not so much when we're speaking of hair oils, because a lot of the hair oils that people are formulating are like food grade. So they go and they get their olive oil, they go get their sunflower, their coconut, and they're creating that balance that works for them. So that's very much understandable. And to me, that's similar to the mayonnaise and the egg, and that's not to minimize someone's accomplishment who developed an oil, but it's relatively safe. It's been governed by the food industry. We know that the natural oils they're using are digestible. When we start making other products, as I've heard some DIYs begin to make their conditioners, and they're using ingredients like trimonium methyl sulfate, trimonium chloride, and the only information they have and only understanding they have of that material is what is given to them when they buy the raw material or when they read a blog that may or may not have been by a scientist, and most time not been written by scientists. That concerns me because yes, those type of ingredients that I just mentioned are conditioning agents. They're cationic surfactants to be specific, and they have very good conditioning properties, especially for hair. But you have to know their limitations. And I always tell everyone too much of anything goes from being good to being bad. Cationic surfactants, if used at a too high level, can be a source of irritation. And so when you think about formulating with ingredients, and all these ingredients have, I call them chemical reactions, not in the sense that they are an alkali like, sodium hydroxide, but they are reacting with the hair. Cationics are positive charge. They react to the plentiful anionic sites of hair. And so they create, this attraction that makes them substantive, especially curly hair. But when we get so comfortable that we're making a lot of conditioners ourselves, and then we're taking those conditioners, we're calling them rinse out, but then we are also saying that they can be left on your hair, it can create a problem. And the main problem that I've seen and that I've been called on to address is someone saying, this conditioner left my hair, my scalp itchy. I have an itchy scalp, so it's a problem with conditioner. And it's not so much the problem with the conditioner as it is not using the conditioner based on its intended use. A lot of times, rinse out conditioner is going to have a higher concentration of a cationic surfactant in there, whereas a leave-in conditioner is going to have a lower concentration. So if you leave a rinse out conditioner with a higher concentration that was not intended to be used as a leave-in, then you do risk taking something that has a positive attribute and now having it create a not so good experience with you for you, because no one likes itchy, irritated scalp. So my concern is there's so much science behind cosmetic ingredients that are not household names that I always encourage individuals are very creative. I love the creativity to at least consult someone in the industry to kind of help support their initiatives.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I want to just encourage some of our viewers, just put in the chat if you have a question, because I have a slew of questions for Angela, but this time is for you. So if you have any questions that you have that's based on what we've spoken about already, or something that's just been burning that you wanted to ask, now is the opportunity. So you hit on a couple of things, because when you said that when people leave in a conditioner that's intended to be rinsed out, then you sometimes have that irritation. And I cannot tell you how many times I heard a number of people say, oh, I heard that it's good to leave some of the conditioner in my hair and not rinse it all off. So, I mean, it feeds into some of the things that I've heard others say.
Yes, and I've heard that as well. And I'd like to apologize because I just had to get up because I had that little alert that your battery is running low. And I'm looking at it, I'm thinking my laptop is plugged in, but it fell out of the socket. So I apologize for that. Yes, I agree. That's the common reason why people do it. So I don't think that the reason is bad. It's more so understanding the products that you're using. And that's why I always say ingredients to products, because you can use that same ingredient in several different ways, several different percentages. And there is sometimes where we've used this deep conditioner or this rinse out conditioner and our hair still doesn't feel soft enough. So the second time we use it, we tend to leave it on longer and longer and longer. But as you and I have talked, Dr. Porter, it is a point where your hair has absorbed all that is going to actually absorb of any ingredients. I mean, I love the idea that we now have so many tools at our exposure. Used to use the hooded dryer to increase the penetration of conditioners. Use the steam hydrator to increase the penetration of conditioners. And sometimes we put a plastic cap on our hair. And all of those things are great, and all of those definitely do increase the rate of penetration of a product. But after a certain time period, a maximum rate of penetration has already occurred. And after that point, or at that point, you're really not seeing a difference by leaving.
Yeah, so speaking on that vein, I want you to define substantive properties, because you mentioned that word, but I'm not sure a lot of our viewers will understand what something that is substantive is. So can you explain that?
Okay, so what I mean by being substantive is that it's going to still be in place. It's going to be in place, and you're going to be able to um, see or feel the benefits. Say, for instance, if we had an ingredient and the ingredient was negative charge and your hair is negative charge, it's going to make contact with the hair fiber because you're putting the product on the hair, but it may be removed when rinsing with water. So it's going to be easily removed. If it's substantive, it's going to be charge attraction, or it's going to be because it's a film former or because it's been able to penetrate inside the hair fiber. It is going to actually have a direct impact on the hair strand or the hair fiber. So substantive is going to be something that has a impact, whether it's surface property, whether it's actually penetrate, but it has a direct affinity. It has a direct attachment to it. It has the ability to make a difference. It's just not put on and wash and remove.
Yep. Thank you for that. So before I get into the next question, because you talked about equipment, and I definitely want to hit on that, but we do have a question from one of our viewers. Says, when formulating, so this is from Tiara. She says, when formulating natural products for Black women, how do we remove an endocrine disrupting or disruptor chemical that may cause hormonal imbalances?
That's a good one, and I sure wish we had our dear friend and colleague, Dr. Barbosa, on this call, because when we start talking about the endocrine balances and disruptors, to be honest, I am still reading up on that research because there's been so many research that says that they are endocrine disruptors, and there are also the same amount of research that says that that's not the case. And so what I'm beginning to do now is look at the specific ingredients and the specific research, because you're hearing a lot of that more so now about hair oils as well. And I'm beginning to look and review the research, and so that I can draw my conclusions. So right now, I would be just hypothetically speaking or guessing, and I choose not to do that. But I will take this time to say that's why Dr. Porter and I have also created a platform together, Science and Beauty Talk, where it's going to be more research specific and details, us reviewing research and applying that information as we have studied it on that platform.
Yeah, the one thing that I can add about that, and it just amazes me, and I'm quite appalled, but you can actually walk into Sally, or I can walk into Sally's like right now, and I can find a product that has placenta in it. And placenta is one of those ingredients that is just well known that it is an
Yes.
endocrine disruptor. And I can go to Sally's right now and find a product that has that in there. And I don't know how that happens. It blows my mind.
Yeah, I don't know how that still happens. I didn't mention that because I remember the placenta discussion back in the 80s.
Yes.
And so to think that there's a product there that still have placenta in there is just, it has me kind of baffled, really has me in awe. Yes, something like that is known, but in my opinion, something like that doesn't really exist anymore. I was surprised you said Sally's. I thought you was going to say one of the local beauty and barber supply stores, because we also know that in the local beauty and barber supply stores, I still see products that we developed in the 90s that have been discontinued since the early 2000s, and they are still in some of the local beauty and barber supply stores. But because products, especially in stores, in mass retailers and specialty stores like Sally's, most of the manufacturers abide by the European guidelines and everything that's FDA regulated, I am very much surprised to see placenta still being in the market.
Yeah.
Yes,
Every
definitely.
time I go, I just want to, I'm hoping that it's no longer there. It's still there,
Yes.
but yeah. So before I get to Rosetta's question, I want to hit on what Tiara said about the industry or the products not being regulated. And that's a tricky way to state what the reality is, because I would say it's probably more accurate, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Angela, but I would say it's probably not police and the oversight isn't there when there are some what can I say, some situations in looking at products being on the shelf, you know. So if it's not police, they're not catching it, but there's a lot of problems with, you know, people are supposed to have, you know, the honor system, or supposed to adhere to the honor system in terms of making sure that you've done everything that you need to do. I'll oftentimes call it your due diligence, to make sure that your product is safe. And so it is regulated, but it's not policed. So is there another perspective that you have, Angela?
I know. I think you said that quite well. I think the policemen end up being the other manufacturers, because a lot of times what happened, that competitor will look at that very strong claim that you made that they know that they can't make, and they may send that letter in. And at that point, you will get a warning letter about removing that claim. The other form of policing is if you're selling your products internationally. That's EU, EU, I should clarify that, I mean European. Their regulations and their policing is really in force. Whereas in the USA, most manufacturers definitely choose to abide by the European regulation, which is very important because they also tend to sell internationally, but it's not policed the same in the US. Mainly comes from someone reporting. Now, once it is brought to their attention, then they will act on it.
Right. And that's one of the reasons why I'm developing a service to just have some of the smaller manufacturers, you know, kind of play in the same space in terms of, you know, making sure that their products do exactly what they say it's going to do, because it's not policed. And that's something that I think is probably detrimental to us as a people, as Black people, because we use some of these products a lot. So the quantity and the frequency in which we use it is elevated compared to a lot of the studies that they do for, you know, maybe someone who's Asian or Caucasian who would cleanse their hair every day and not necessarily use the same amount of the products that we use. So it really needs to be more research done to really understand the effects of the quantities that we use.
Yes. I also like to clarify too, because I don't want anyone to walk away thinking that the products that are being produced in the US may not be compliant. Because there's a difference between using a raw material that has safety or regulatory issues, opposed to making product claims. But I'm speaking of more so the product claims that companies and entrepreneurs are making to be competitive. And we all understand that this is an oversaturated market. So there's always a need to be competitive. And sometimes those claims that we are using to be competitive is what isn't complete. Not as much the physical formulation or the actual formulation itself, because most companies do make certain that the raw materials that they're using are safe to use in hair care products.
Yeah, so one mention there based on what you're saying, because it's interesting, because when I go to different trade shows and I see a lot of the raw material manufacturers there, a lot of times they try to tell you, oh, here's the newest and greatest ingredient. And if depending upon what trade show you go to, so not all of them are created equal. And so some of the smaller ones, when they source their raw materials from China, you have to be very careful, because sometimes they don't do their due diligence in making sure where they get their ingredients from actually have the qualitative and quantitative analysis to make sure that it's safe. So all the big, known manufacturers that like the L'Oreal's, the Procter and Gamble's, and the Unilevers use, of course, they have to do their due diligence. But the smaller ones, I would say you have to, make sure that you ask for a certificate of analysis and make sure that, you have a way to have quality control of your product.
I totally agree. And I think that's another reason that I was so motivated to create D&E Industries Inc. Because with my experience in the industry, I still have a very good relationship and able to work with those same raw material companies that service Unilever and a L'Oreal. And what a lot of entrepreneurs don't know, a lot of those raw materials that are produced by those very large companies that service, commerce also have third party distributors or suppliers. So there are options for entrepreneurs to still purchase that same quality of product, third party distributor, but it's not a lot of awareness because, of course, they make the bulk of their money off of the large companies. So it's not a lot of awareness out there. So I call it leveling up, level the playing field, and use our experience and expertise to share others so they will have the opportunity to have products with the same quality of material.
Excellent point. That's an excellent point. And you are so right. And if you're not in the industry, you just have no idea, right? So yeah.
You're just Googling. And I mean, I'm guilty of Google too. I'm a Google fan. So if something you don't know, you just Google. And there's always a little truth in everything. Yes, it may be the same raw material, but it may not have undergone the same process, same safety and quality measurements. And so, yes, I totally agree. That's our responsibilities and others and who have committed in this industry to make certain that we support and empower each other.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I want to get to Rosetta's question because that was like a perfect question to ask because one of the things I wanted you to talk about is, you've had such experience with products, but a lot of times you have different processes, so the hooded dryer that you spoke of earlier and the steamer. And so what Rosetta asked was regarding the hair strand health, can you explain the impact of using a dryer with a cap versus a steamer?
I have to be honest. You say Rosetta?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Hi, Rosetta. Really good question. I have to be honest. The difference that I have really seen is the rate of penetration of the product itself. So we know that the hooded dryer increases the rate of penetration over use of no heat at all. When you add the steamer to that, it further increase, and we can think of why, because the steam is actually, it's a form of heat, but it's inclusive of water. So now you're introducing a water molecule that's going to interact with the protein, which is going to allow it to open up. You're going to get quicker rearrange. You're not opening up the protein, you're opening up the cuticle, rearranging proteins, and you're allowing quicker penetration. But to the point that I made earlier, if you stay under that steamer for an extended period of time, and this was research that we actually conducted, you no longer see a difference. So the steamer definitely helps with that process by providing a way to increase the penetration of that conditioner so that your hair can really feel soft and moisturized. But if you stay under there too long, like some people will want to say, oh, you stay under the hooded dryer for 30 minutes at a form of additional service or treatment. And I have to be honest, research has shown that when you start looking at 30 minutes plus, you've kind of even out the differences. They're no longer difference that you would see if you compared the steamer to just a regular hooded dryer.
Yeah. So you mentioned about opening the cuticle. And so can you elaborate on that a little bit more? Because I mean, anytime you penetrate more or you add water in such a way that it, increases the magnitude in which the cuticle layers are open, how does that impact the quality of hair?
Now, this is a question Dr. Porter definitely could be asking herself, asking and answering herself. Well,
Well,
we all know that in the industry, that researchers, that hair is more fragile when it's wet. So water has some good benefits in the sense that it is the point in which we're breaking hydrogen bonds. And to be honest, that's a good thing when you're trying to have a treatment penetrate the hair. But we also know that our hair is more fragile when it's wet. So it is like creating that balance between we know what is needed for the penetration of these products and managing the amount of damage when hair is wet. The beauty of this is what we're speaking of as far as steamer, you're not saturating your hair with water. So that's different from if you were rinsing your hair or, shampooing your hair and you just love to comb your hair while you're shampooing it and wondering why you may be having some challenges. And challenge would be because your hair is more fragile when it's wet, you need to make certain you minimize the manipulation during that period of time. So I don't know if that's what you were leading into, and I would love for you to elaborate on that yourself as some of the work that I know you've done.
yeah. So I think they get tired of hearing it from me. I had a little write up when I said, and you and I can talk about this for freaking hours. So we're not going to go into
Yes.
detail about it, but how you can over moisturize, but the terminology is, really tricky. But yeah, I always tell people just to be aware that when you have so much water, and like you said, especially to the point of saturation, you are really lifting those cuticles and you compromise the integrity of the hair. So yeah, you hit it on the head. I just wanted to make sure that I'm not the only one out there saying it. I keep telling people that I'm not the only. So I consider myself a hair scientist and you're a hair care scientist. But my expertise is really about the quality of the hair, but it goes hand in hand, and which is why you and I have so many conversations with one another, because it's almost as though you can't have one without the other.
You can't. You can't. I can't develop a product for a substrate and I don't understand the quality, the hair quality of the substrate, or I don't understand the substrate itself with all the differences that you have often explained, leading into a lot of the physical difference and uniqueness of our curly hair. But you said something that made me want to elaborate a little bit more because I just had this conversation about over conditioning. And someone asked me, they was like, how do you know when your hair is over conditioning? Is that a bad thing and how that could be a bad thing? And they weren't speaking at that point about water saturation or anything like that. They were talking about the use of conditioners. So use of products with cationic surfactants mainly. We know some conditioners also have silicones, and I tell everyone all of these can be some form of film former. You can actually put that fishnet stocking. I always like to use that terminology. Some people here may be too young for fishnet stockings. I don't know, but I like to think of it as that fishnet stocking that completely forms that net over your leg. And you can actually create that with silicone polymers or the cationic polymers that we spoke of because they're so attractive to the anionic sites in here. They create that film former along the hair fiber as well. And so they said, okay, if these are good things, then how am I how am I over conditioning the hair? And it goes back again when we were talking about the difference in degree of porosity. We're talking about the difference in the diameter, and sometimes it is even just about weight. But a lot of times, what has been spoken of when we speak of over conditioning has been more so related to the the mechanism in which now the hair becomes limp. It feels like it is lifeless. You're not able to style the as easy as you normally would or you would like to. But there's also conditioning as relate over conditioning as relate to hair quality. So I didn't know if you wanted to chime in on the over conditioning as relates to hair quality, or for this audience, is it more so related to now, your hair is almost seem lifeless because it limps and it has no body, has no bounce at all.
Yeah, I suffer from that. Or when I choose to wear my hair straight, that's something that I suffer from, the over conditioning. Unfortunately, I must have a whole lot of negative charges on my surface because when someone puts a conditioner on my hair, it does not take long at all for my hair to become weighted down. So it really is, as you said earlier, knowing what products are more substantive to your particular hair. And I know for a fact that my hair is definitely considered more porous. And so, yeah, it sucks everything up. And it is a matter of just cleansing properly. And that's a whole nother can of worms. But I don't know if we want to talk about that just yet, because there are a number of questions that have popped up that I want to make sure that I get to, because I know your time is limited, and this is for all the listeners. Thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate it. Just as a reset, I am Dr. Crystal Porter, and you are here with our Black Hair Matters. And I have Angela Ellington here, who is a hair care scientist, and she has almost 35 years of experience. So just wanted to reset so everyone knows what we're doing. So there was a question about when we were talking about penetration and different devices. Someone asked about a mister. And so now misting actually came about after I left L'Oreal, and that's a project that I would have loved to have been a part of. So I was just wondering, have you seen any studies that can tell the difference between a steamer and a mister? I've been looking for the data for years because I've heard what they've said, but there's no data behind it. So is there any input you have about that?
I don't have any data on the steamer versus mister, but let's look at it from what we were speaking of earlier regarding the mechanism, because the mister is usually just misting water. So you're going to get the breaking of the hydrogen bonds, and you're actually going to have the water, your hair ability to absorb water. The difference, just from a mechanism point of view, in the steamer is that you have the steam, which is also a form of heat and water, but coupled with heat. So you have two mechanisms. You have the water, which we know actually is the first entry point into the hair as far as breaking hydrogen bonds. And then you also have heat, which opens the cuticle also. So I would imagine, based on the fact of the mechanism in which heat reacts with the cuticle and the mechanism in which water reacts with the cuticle, that you should see an advantage with the steamer over just mist. But then it also depends on what your objective is. What are you trying to do? Because when we were speaking of steamer versus hood before, we were talking about the use of penetration of a deep conditioner or a rinse out conditioner. Um, if you're using a mister to actually help a leave-in conditioner, or if you're using it to help detangle the hair, your objective is just as important as your mechanism, and just as important as the product on which you're using, because we're speaking a lot about water And I want to make certain that it's clear that we're not saying that water in a product is a bad thing, because most products are water soluble. They're either water soluble or they're either what we call all in water emulsions, where the water is still the external phase and then the oil is incorporated inside. So the first point of contact is water. So a lot of your conditioning ingredients are water soluble. A lot of your vitamins are water soluble. And then there are other materials that benefits that are not water soluble, like your natural oils, anything that's lipids. So we go back of the key components in here, and it consists of lipids in addition to water. So both of them are important, water and lipids. The things that lipid and natural oils have in common is fatty acids. Natural oils are derived from fatty acids. So I tell people you have to put in perspective and not overgeneralize everything, because yes, water has a role and so does oils. Oils have a role. It based on what your objective is and what you're trying to achieve will determine how you would use them and what mechanism you would use to apply them.
Yeah, so as you were talking, of course, my wheels are turning. And I'm sitting here like, you know what? I have my dynamic vapor absorption instrument. So I could actually do an experiment where I control the relative humidity
Awesome.
and the temperature, because that really is the difference between the steamer and the mister, right? So we can
Yes.
look at the rate of penetration and my preliminary. So right now I have the device and I am still validating and optimizing the experiment, because for understanding all types of hair, you really need to understand the parameters that will increase the sensitivity of what you're trying to do. Um,
Yes.
so I'm in the process of doing that right now. So that would be an awesome experiment to do and not difficult at all with the instrumentation that I have. So as you were talking, I was like, okay, there's something.
Now, remind me, that's also your device in which you measure porosity.
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay. Can you enlighten everyone? Because you know we both kind of came up in the industry where we know the traditional porosity test. Can
Yeah.
you share this good news and another way in which I say that we're trying to level up and share our experience and knowledge with
Yeah.
others?
Right. So porosity is usually, I already said that I have high porous hair, and that is due to the experience in terms of using products and knowing how my hair responds to it. So porous hair absorbs products, sometimes even, oils, if they are small enough to penetrate inside of the cuticle. It the rate of penetration is faster for porous hair. And so you typically can have people put out there on the internet that you have this water, the cup of water, and you put the one hair strand in there, and depending upon whether it floats or whether it sinks to the bottom will determine just how porous your hair is. And so my experience with that, and not in a laboratory, I have to say that, but you can actually have your own laboratory and make observations by just having a cup of water, making sure that you control the quality of water that you use. So using deionized water or distilled water to keep that consistent, because all water is not the same depending upon where you're from in the United States. So that can contribute to a lot of inconsistencies as well, which is why science is so important, because you think of all the variables that there are that can influence the results, right? So even with the same type of water, I've seen inconsistencies. But anyway, the dynamic vapor absorption instrument is an instrument where you can measure how much, well, you take the weight of the hair and you measure, as you ramp up either temperature or humidity, the weight difference and how it goes from one relative humidity to the other. And so that rate in which the weight will change will dictate how porous the hair is. And so that's something that I just got a few months ago. Like I said, well, actually 2 months ago, and I am still validating and optimizing it. But it's very promising in being able to understand what's going on and to allow someone who makes a product to make claims on how it's benefiting the hair. And so I'm excited about that. So thank you for that opportunity to add that in there. I wasn't going to do that.
I'm excited about that also. That's why I took that as an opportunity.
All right. So I know your time is limited. How much time do we have?
We actually have 15 minutes.
Okay. Let's get to some other questions. Okay, we have a question about collagen being used in products and our thoughts on that. Hmm.
That's another good one. Who am I dressing now? You got to give me the name.
Oh,
I want to say
yeah,
hello.
yeah, yeah. Rosetta again.
Oh, hi, Rosetta again. Yes, I always struggled with collagen in products. Not because collagen isn't a good thing, because we know that. We know that collagen is a good thing, but whether or not how effective it is in actually a hair care product. Because typically the molecular weight is so large that it really is not penetrating the hair. And I know sometimes that's hard to imagine because a lot of these collagen based products actually leave your hair feeling kind of, I don't want to say brittle, but you say your hair feels like is strong, and brittle has been used to the point of if you use too much of it, then it feels like it's going to snap. So it's almost like you feel like it's strengthening your hair as you're putting it on your hair strand. And so people assuming that it is penetrating the hair. But remember, again, we were just speaking of ingredients that have surface properties. And so a lot of times you have these ingredients that have names of things that are inclusive of our internal hair makeup, but their benefit in a formula is or so surface, and they give you the aesthetics or the feel of the real attribute of the ingredient, especially collagen as it relates to, strengthening the hair fiber.
Yeah, you said something that really triggered a memory, because we studied a lot about like keratin and really what keratin can do. So everyone knows that, hair, skin, and nail is made of keratin, but they don't realize that the form that the keratin that's used in the formula is hydrolyzed. And that means that it's, broken up into many parts. So it's not the real structure, and I say that loosely because it's still classified as keratin, but it
Yeah.
doesn't exist in the same structure as it does when it's the composition of our hair is not that same structure. So it's always interesting to see how we as scientists can put a spin on it, because I think we sometimes can use these buzz terms that will resonate with the consumer because they're like, oh, I heard that. Yes, keratin is great. Oh, collagen is great for us. But in this natural form, yes, it is, but it's
Yes.
not always, it doesn't function the same.
Yes. And I have to also add that there are some raw material suppliers who have created some various forms where they have instrumental data, but not of collagen. They would, what comes to mind, maybe a rice protein, of various type of proteins, but a lot of those ingredients also includes now some cationics. And so they've made them more conditioning. So a lot of times what you're getting the benefit of again is film formers, because we know when you start doing tests like tensile strength studies, which Dr. Porter does a lot of the tensile strength studies, you are protecting the cuticle. And in a sense, if you're protecting the cuticle by creating a film former, you also, to a certain degree, is protecting the cortex, because the cuticle serves as an insulator for the cortex. So there are ways that you can use certain ingredients and see a benefit, and in some instances, even a benefit instrumental, but it doesn't mean that it is of that exact same origin as Dr. Porter said, because typically it isn't. Which is why you see a lot of manufacturers now, which I like seeing them do, they speak more of cross links from the use of various amino acids that may also be found in some of the fruit extracts and some other acids. And I can't call them out specifically because I need to differentiate between actual research data and knowledge and experience, because of course I can't break any confidentiality agreement. But I will say in general, I like the fact that there's been a lot of focus on ingredients where the molecular weight is small enough where they can penetrate and they can create new cross links to try to help anchor. It's not a replacement of the cysteine bond, but it's serving more of an anchor amongst by bridging with various other amino acids that's found in here.
Awesome. All right, so Mary asks about the wash and go, which entails wetting the hair every day for styling purposes. So I think she's referring to what we were talking about in terms of saturating the hair, if I'm not mistaken. I think that that's probably around the time that that question came in. So you want to talk about wash and go and the implications of that?
Yeah. And again, I want to keep reiterating that we're not saying water every day is a bad thing, because our hair is going to come in contact with water every day regardless, especially if we're shower users instead of um, tubs. So we're not saying that. When we were speaking of saturation, and we're just making certain everyone is clear that when you're shampooing your hair, because when you're actually intentionally applying water directly to your hair, whether it's to remove a product or to wet your hair before the application, then that is typically a larger amount of water than you would just use on a daily basis. But now, to answer the question regarding co-wash, if
So
we're
it wasn't
speaking.
co-wash, it was wash and go.
Oh, wash and go. So
Yeah.
immediately I went to co-wash. So if you're washing going, I'm assuming that you're using a shampoo and conditioner, or you're using a co-wash, as your shampoo and conditioner combo. I don't see a problem with that at all. I always just ask that during that process, you're mindful of the degree or the amount of manipulation, because you know that your hair is more vulnerable when it's wet. Your hair must be wet in order for you to use these products. As we were stating earlier, that the first point of entry is breaking hydrogen bonds. So you must have the water to use the shampoo and to use the conditioner. We're just stating that during this process, the use or the force behind the manipulation needs to be mindful, because your hair is more vulnerable because it's open. Just think about it, it's just like individual. You open yourself up and you share everything, you're more vulnerable. So your hair is pretty much in that same state. You're opening your cuticle up, and your hair is absorbing this water, so it is more vulnerable. But it doesn't mean that you're to stop and not do these things by any means. That's not what we're intending to say. We're just wanting you to be mindful that your hair is more vulnerable now, and so you need to not apply a large amount of force or just a constant repeated cycle of manipulation.
Okay. Thank you. I agree 100% with what you said. Then we have Nia made a comment saying that she doesn't do wash and goes. She just uses moisturizing creams to retwist the hair almost every day. Robin is on. Hey, Robin Groover. Good to see you.
Oh, hi, Robin.
She said,
Savannah native.
She says hydration steam therapy is beneficial long term in the treatment category. Water molecules open the cuticle and swell at a pH of 7, and re-wetting with water is counterproductive, releasing the nutrients. It dries the hair out, leaving the strands brittle and dry. Balancing water intakes is imperative for hair strand strength. Always have a healthy hair professional to help retain moisture. That was
I,
a
I Yeah, I agree with the comment. Always seek your stylist or your healthy professional. I think the only thing that I will say to that, just to be clear from what, our research and things have shown, is that when you couple heat with water, then the pH, I won't say that it does not matter, but remember that heat itself is a form of raising cuticle. And so even if your product is a pH 5 or a pH 4.5, if you're using steam, then that cuticle is going to be raised. Now, if you're just using, and this is another good experiment, Crystal, which we'll talk about later, when you're talking about the mister in comparison to steam. So it's like we're looking at several different variables. Water is the constant variable. Then the other variable will be heat, and then separately pH. We know the impact of pH, and it actually most literature would say that all the bonds begin to break at around pH 10, but you will begin to see the actual swelling of hair at around pH 7. So that's one way, pH. Heat is another way in which that happens, and that tends to be independent of pH. And so what this does is show that we have various mechanisms to achieve our end result. It doesn't make one way wrong or better. It just educates on the sense that there's various mechanisms to achieve our objective.
And so Robin then added that product with a large molecular weight will kill body and bounce. If
Totally
it's
agree.
substantive, wait, if it's substantive, absolutely.
Yeah, if it doesn't rinse right off, because some of them rinse right off.
Yeah. But you know what? I am gonna need to because wow, we're almost at the top of the hour and I don't want to
I
hold you
know
up.
it's
I know
3 minutes. Yeah.
no. Okay. So with that, so
And let me say why I have 3 minutes. I'm sorry about it because this is important to me. I am not the person to say I got 3 minutes because I have no desire to continue this talk because I'm loving the energy. Again, I'm committed to making certain that I serve and help others. But I have to be honest, all this technology stuff is new, and I just didn't have enough separation in between my calendar appointments. So I literally owe someone else this time at 1 p.m. And that's the other reason why. But the next time we do this, I will be mindful because I would definitely like to continue the conversations.
yeah. Well, not a problem. But I wanted to leave the last few minutes for you to tell us about what you do, your last parting words. How can people reach you? How do you serve? Let's hear all about it.
I know, and this is the part that's the hardest for me because I think I'm more modest. But I did mention it earlier that Dini Industries Inc. is my consultant company. We also provide product development services for entrepreneurs. I also support contract manufacturers with ethnic hair care, and I also support cosmetic manufacturers in the area of claim substantiation. Another area where I'm very present is with the Association of Natural Hair Care, ran by Elaine Truesdale, an amazing woman, where there's a platform for stylists and educators to learn more about all aspects of the beauty industry. So I'm an indie beauty advisor there, and there we will be providing education on that platform also. So I can be found there as well as an indie beauty advisor. And then I also have my brand, Moisture Silk, where I actually want to focus on styling options because we also always talk about, especially that 4C hair, we don't have the styling options that we desire to have without leaving our hair feeling hard and brittle. So we can do styling and we can mold our hair and have that nice, defined look. But sometimes it comes with the cost, and the price for it is maybe either hard and brittle or not being able to achieve the look. And then I also want to make certain for consumers who like me, I'm not twisting, I'm not locking. I just love the natural look. But if you saw me before this call, this natural look looked like knots and very, very tight curl. And I just want to loosen my curl and be fine with that. So I make certain that we have options. I'm in it to make certain that we have options while I empower others and while I also mentor college students interested in STEM and they're interested in working in the cosmetic industry. I've had the opportunity to lecture at a couple of universities. One I may be doing part-time, full part-time in the fall. And I know I say full part-time, but I mean committed to lecture in the fall. And then here with me, my dear friend, my sister, my colleague, I'm committed to supporting her with her our Black Hair Matters initiatives, and we are going to also work together again with podcasts and other forms for Science and Beauty Talk. We'll take each one of these topics similar to that we spoke of today and go into detail. So
Yeah.
those are the few of
Your
the things.
website. What's your website so I can make sure I
Yes.
plug
So the yes. So the website for consultant and product development is DE Industries, and that's plural, Inc.com. So DEIndustriesinc.com. I also do one-on-one consultations, and those can be booked on that site as well. And my hair care brand is moisturesilk.com. That's moisturasilk.com.
Wait, spell Moisture Silk again.
It's moisturasilk.com.
Okay, I got it. All right, I just put that in the chat. Thank you so much. I know you have to go. You have another
Yes.
commitment, but I want to thank you. I mean, it's really a pleasure to have you as my first of the year to kick things off officially. And so we saw some of the questions. I promise you that we will, in one form or the other, get those questions answered. And as
Yes.
always, thank you so much and take care and love your hair. Bye bye.
Yes. Love.